Hi, my name is Dr. Bethany Murray, and I'm going to talk to you about a research project that was carried out by some students at Indiana University. The research team was 5 nursing students on the IU Columbus campus. The students were interested in looking at hand hygiene. There are a number of products on the market for hand hygiene, including antibacterial soap, regular hand soap, and alcohol-based hand sanitizer. The students were also interested in hand hygiene in school-aged children because they tend to transmit a higher rate of upper respiratory infections than the general population. And we know that hand washing is a very important means of preventing the spread of respiratory and other infections. In their literature review, the students running this project discovered that previous studies required participants to wash their hands for 30 to 60 seconds. However, in a real life situation, most people only wash their hands for 15 seconds. They decided that they would use 15 seconds for the research project to mimic a real life situation. The goal was to find the most effective hand washing technique between antibacterial hand soap, non-antibacterial or regular hand soap, and alcohol-based hand sanitizer. The null hypotheses were 2. First null was that there would be no difference pre and post test in microorganism count after cleaning hands with 15 seconds with the following 3 products. The second null hypothesis that there would be no difference between the groups of antibacterial soap, regular soap, and hand sanitizer in the sample of children chosen. Children were recruited from a private school in Jackson County, Indiana, where one of the student researchers' own child was attending. The children were voluntary participants. IRB or Institutional Review Board approval was obtained for this study. The children gave verbal consent and their parents gave written consent. Exclusion criteria were any kind of skin sensitivity, skin conditions, or allergy to the hand products, or any other factor that might make the child unwilling to participate in the study, such as anxiety. As a part of this study, the students were able to obtain a small research grant of $1,500. With that grant, they bought a Hygiena System Sure Plus ATP luminometer. This machine will measure ATP molecules on a surface, thus giving some indication of microorganism count. It also provides measurable continuous or ratio level data. And they also were able to then use their grant fund to buy the hand soap and the hand sanitizer, paper towels, a stopwatch for timing the hand washing, and lastly, a participant incentives of Dum Dum lollipops for each child who completed the study. Children were randomly assigned to one of 3 treatment arms: antibacterial soap, regular soap, or hand sanitizer. And randomization was done by just taking every child as they reported to the research area and asking them to go to line 1, 2, or 3. There were 94 children who participated in this study. 44 of them were male and 50 female. The average age was 8.4 years. The technique was to swab each child's hand with ATP monitoring device for a pretest measure. The child then went to the hand washing station for their randomly assigned hand washing technique of either antibacterial soap, regular soap, or hand sanitizer. After they washed or rubbed their hands together for 15 seconds, they then dried their hands with a paper towel in all 3 groups. And then their hand was again swabbed for a post-test measure with the ATP monitoring device. After completion, the child was given a lollipop and sent back to class. So a pretest ANOVA, analysis of variance, tested for between group differences at the start of the study. A post-test analysis of variance looked at between group differences following the 3 treatment arms. Within the groups, pre and post-test t-tests were used for matched or dependent pairs for each group. This would help determine whether the soaps or hand sanitizer had any effect in reducing microorganism count. The pretest ANOVA looked at the 3 treatment groups. We found that the critical value of 3.10 and F statistic of 2.10 led to a p-value of 0.13. This is not a statistically significant p-value. So this is a good thing, because pre-test, we wanted the 3 groups to be equal to one another through randomization. So this is an indication that because there was no statistically significant difference between the 3 groups, pre-test randomization worked. Post-test ANOVA, however, was a different story. Again, the critical value for this test is 3.10, but the F statistic went up to 15.32, which is a p-value or a significance level of 0.001, or very significant. So the conclusion was that the 3 groups of antibacterial soap, regular soap, and hand sanitizer are significantly different from one another. But at this point, the ANOVA test doesn't tell us how they are different from one another or where those differences lie. So let's look at the pre and post test, the match pairs of each child. So in the antibacterial soap group, the children experienced a 0.001 significant drop in T values pre and post test. In the regular soap group, they experienced a 0.001 value. And in the hand sanitizer group, you can see the T values are slightly different, 6.24, 5.40, and 3.35 pre and post test, but all 3 of these were statistically significant. So the conclusion was that in all 3 cases, there was a statistically significant reduction in microorganism count post-test. Does this imply yet that antibacterial soap, regular soap, and hand sanitizer are all exactly the same? Well, we can't draw that conclusion at this point. We all know that they significantly reduce microorganism count pre and post-test in the individual child. So let's look at the different methods. When comparing antibacterial soap to regular hand soap in a t-test, the T statistic was 1.86, which was a significance level of 0.03, and that is significant as a 1-telled t-test. However, the 2-telled, more sensitive t-test was a 0.07, which was not statistically significant. If you compare antibacterial soap versus hand sanitizer, you can see that the T value is much higher and the significance level is much, much lower. And if you compare regular hand soap versus hand sanitizer, again, this T statistic is much higher and the significance level is much lower. So what does this mean? So the conclusion was that antibacterial soap is not really different from regular soap when using a more sensitive 2-telled t-test. You could run it as a 1-telled t-test, and in which case we were able to obtain a significant level of 0.03 or be 97% confidence in that test. However, it's not a very strong finding. On the other hand, both antibacterial soap and regular soap were significantly different from hand sanitizer. And we were able to reject the null, that there was no difference with antibacterial soap and regular soap from hand sanitizer. So how different pre-test to post-test, or what is the effect size? Well, the hand sanitizer had a reduction of 37% pre and post-test. The regular soap has a reduction of 70% pre and post-test. And the antibacterial soap has a reduction of 82% pre and post-test. So you can see that the antibacterial soap has a pretty robust reduction in microorganism count. These 0.70 or 70% of regular soap is a pretty good reduction in microorganism count. And the hand sanitizer was a pretty weak reduction in microorganism count. Here's another way of looking at that data. So the lavender colored bars are pre-test and the blue bars are post-test. Okay, so we can't generalize these findings because this was a limited study with a smaller number of students. We do want to acknowledge the Indiana University School of Nursing in Columbus for the grants and also the Office of Student Research. So in conclusion, this study tells us that there are significant differences between using soap and water and using hand sanitizer for reducing microorganism count. The difference between using antibacterial soap and regular soap are not different enough to possibly justify the higher cost of antibacterial soap. But if you look at each method individually, antibacterial soap appears to be superior. Regular soap is very good, and hand sanitizer is better than doing nothing at all. So the students concluded that all three of these hand washing techniques were good, and soap and water was best. Thank you for your time and attention. Goodbye.